and Maddie put it really well. She's like, there's some tension in that room. And I was like, yeah, there is. It's interesting, isn't it? We're starting a new series as we go through John 13 through 17, and Jesus really gives his most extensive teaching in the Gospel of John. We're calling it Stay Near. This is kind of the through point of everything he's about to teach to us in the next couple of chapters. And he's leaving. For us, he's left. He's leaving, physically. But he has some ideas about what it means to stay near to him even as he goes. And so we're going to just talk about the different kinds of things he has to teach us. There's a saying in the business world, business leadership, that I actually like a lot. It's more is caught than taught. Has anyone heard that before? What does it mean? What would you guys say in one sentence? What does it mean? Yes, Olivia. Yep, you learn more by doing than just listening. Anyone else have an idea?
People notice more about how you live your life and what they tell you on how you should live your life.
Yep, absolutely. So what you observe kind of sets the pace. Anyone else have one more addition? It's a good saying. It's actually, I'm pretty skeptical of a lot of the business leadership stuff. It's probably one of my favorite things that I've learned from that world. Foundationally, kind of expand on it, what it also means is that the prevailing communication style of our day, which is kind of a didactic, teacher to student, I'm the expert and you're going to listen and I'm going to communicate to you. It's not really a conversation. Information transference, it can help people change, for sure, and it does. But it seems like what we're learning over and over again as a people group is that the foundation for significant change is to see something in action as the example, and to then experience it for yourself, right? That's the caught part. I caught it. That makes sense. Like, I understood we talked about this for a long time, but then you see it happen, you go, oh, I get it. I see what you're saying. It also means that regardless of what is taught from the top, culture wins the day 100% of the time. So, for example, has anyone ever been part of like a new workers training at like a new business that you worked at, or there's like an orientation, or like, hey, sit through these videos, this is how our company works, that kind of thing. Maybe you've done ongoing training with a business that you're part of, something like that. So when I lived in Lexington, I was a manager at a bookstore. It was called Family Christian Bookstores. Can you imagine me as a bookstore manager? I hated every second of it. And it was actually not the bookstore part, it was the family Christian part that I hated, ironically. But, so we sat through, I don't know, like 8 hours of training. It was all videos. It was great. The last 2 hours were about one new product that Family Christian Bookstores was coming out with. I genuinely cannot remember the name. I've spent days trying, I even Googled it, like, you can't find anything, because I don't know if you knew this, but that bookstore is out of business, and I helped with that. But I cannot remember the name of this product, but essentially what it was is it was a subscription service that you would have on your phone or some of your devices, and it kind of just compiled tons of Christian content onto one thing. Their ideas are like, this is the future of Christian media. There were sermons, there were videos, there were TV shows, all kinds of encouraging things from all these big name people. And this was their thing. They said every single customer conversation needs to end with you encouraging someone to buy this product. Every single one. And so I immediately set in my heart to hate it. I hated it so much. I despise this product because this is not why I wanted to be part of like a Christian bookstore. I'm not a good employee. I've already confessed it to you guys. I'm really not a very good employee in most situations. So I say all that to say, I was like, I hate this immediately. I'm willing to try it. Let's just see how it plays out in the culture of our store. Fun fact. Nobody in our store talked about this product. Not only did not every conversation end with a conversation about it, no conversation ended with talking about this product. And so I was like, sick, right? That means I don't have to. They bring people in, they'd seen letters, they'd send emails, hey, your store is the lowest performing store in this thing. And we're like, we know. And then we'd high-five each other. It's not a good thing. But here's why I'm saying this. The culture won the day. It didn't matter how many times they communicated it. It didn't matter how many emails they sent. It didn't matter how many trainings. Until somebody came into that place and demonstrated what it meant to be an ideal employee with this product, nobody was going to do it. Maybe it should have been me. I'll leave that up to your judgment. If you think that should have been me, write me an email, and you can call my old boss. This moment in John 13 is a catching moment for the disciples. This is a more is caught than taught moment, for certain. Come on, buddy. Hold on a second, sorry. This is a more is caught than taught kind of moment. He is about to go on to his largest portion of teaching in the Gospel of John, culminating in his ultimate triumphant moment, which is his arrest, his trial, his death, and his resurrection from the dead. This is where he's going. This is his last moments, and this is what he's choosing to do. As I was prepared for this time, I was really struck by the interaction between Peter and Jesus. I don't know if you followed that. It's just really funny. And Peter's foot washing, right? So in verse 6, he goes, when Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Like, seriously? And Jesus replied, well, hear this. You don't understand now what I'm doing, but someday you will. Right? Pretty straightforward thing. Peter protested, you will never ever wash my feet. Jesus replied, unless I wash you, you won't even belong to me. And Simon Peter explained, oh, okay. Then wash my hands and my head as well, please. Right? Not just my feet. And Jesus says, a person who is bathed all over does not need to wash except for the feet to be entirely clean. And you disciples are clean, but not all of you. Dun, dun, dun. Right? Like, that's the moment. And I love this contrast between what Jesus says to Peter, you don't understand, but someday you will. And then immediately in verse 12, he goes, after washing his feet, he put on his robe again and sat down, and he asked, what does he ask? Do you understand what I'm doing? And if you're in the room, you're like, well, no, dude. Like, you just told me I wouldn't understand this. What? Right? I love it. I love it because, as a general rule in the spiritual life, if you have a confusing interaction with Jesus, you have to lean in. It's not to lean out. He's not one of your high school friends who's like flicky flaky. He's not going to be around. He's not going to treat you right. He's just trying to mess with you. The goal is to lean in, not lean back. So this is a lean in moment. It's like, you're not going to understand it, but someday you will. But do you understand it? You're like, uh-oh. He's about to talk about something here. What is Jesus doing here? That is the question. Do we understand what Jesus is doing here? What is he doing? Well, for one, in my opinion, he's doing something really messy. Messy might be one of the most helpful words to summarize what Jesus was trying to accomplish in the Incarnation, right? I don't know if you guys knew this or not. Childbirth is an agonizing process. Not for me, I was just there. But I've heard that it's pretty tough. It's a lot, right? It's messy. There's a lot going on. There's yelling, there's screaming. I don't know how you picture the God of the universe interacting with us on a regular basis. But I can tell you one thing concretely, is that the God of the universe, when he came in human flesh, he was born, right? He came into the world wailing and screaming. And there were other people wailing and screaming. It was a lot. It was an intense moment. It was messy. That's the beginning of the Incarnation, of the most pivotal aspect of human existence, like the life-changing moment for humanity. That's how it starts. Jesus proclaimed a gospel, a good news, that had nothing to do with sterile environments, devoid of emotion or sensation or feeling. It's not a classroom. It's not a life lived only in your head. It's not a place where imaginary people go to imaginary places that don't really exist, and that's what we call mission. What Jesus was talking about had everything to do with a crowded room, really nervous energy, a dirty wash tub. It was gross, right? Jesus and Peter having an argument right in the middle of this holy moment, right? Like they're like, bitch, you're not gonna wash me. No, I'm gonna wash your feet later. Right? Like this is what's happening when you're like in a prayer meeting and then suddenly two people are arguing, right? It's a weird moment. It's anxious energy. He just keeps saying, there's a traitor in our midst. Okay, let me wash your feet. And it's like, wait, what? Are we gonna talk about that? All of them sitting in Jerusalem where they've been threatened to be killed if they come back. This is where they're at. Jesus is not even remotely afraid to get messy. Not even kind of. Certainly not physically messy here, right? Where like these feet would have been caked with dust and dirt and dung. No roads, no paving. Animals are your vehicle, right? Nobody's cleaning that up. It's gross. This is not a gentle foot washing where like you did at your wedding or something like that. Like, oh, your feet are so beautiful. Let me wipe them off, right? There's grunting involved. Scrubbing this crap off of your feet. This is what Jesus is doing right now, right? Going hard at these feet. Seriously. It's gross. And he's not afraid to get physically messy. He's not afraid to get spiritually messy. Maybe this isn't obvious. He rubbed shoulders with the stories of tax collectors, right? Who were spurned and hurt by their community. Everybody rejected them. He rubbed shoulders with widows who were remarried just to make ends meet and survive. That's the only reason they did it. He rubbed shoulders with prostitutes who were treated poorly by religious leaders. He healed blind men who were abandoned by their families. He hung out with priests who were rejected and confused and out of their place of their work, right? Nicodemus coming in the middle of the night in secret so he doesn't get fired. These are the people he hangs out with. Radicals and rebels who are trying to restructure the world through violence. These are his people. This is just a sample size of the stories that Jesus knows, the people that he cared for, the kinds of conversations that he has regularly. None of them neat or pretty or tied with a bow, right? They don't go that way. There's not one of them that you could take as like a moral story for your kids. Like, and this is now how you live your life, right? It's all unfinished. It's intense. It is no accident that the God of the Old Testament is concerned primarily when he's building a nation with the plight of the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, the foreigner in the land of Israel, the outcasts and the forsaken. And so when the God of Israel comes in the flesh, in the form of Jesus, he kind of notices the gap in his desires of how people are treated and then what he experiences in real life. Like, hey, this isn't really what we were going for. So maybe these are the people I'm going to hang out with and make sure they understand who they are and what they were made for. It's messy. To all these people, Jesus taught and demonstrated what it means for the God of the universe to dwell in their midst. To make his home with saints and with sinners. To be a healing light in what seemed to them like an ever-present and constant darkness. He is not afraid to be messy. And by being messy, here's another synonym that maybe you resonate with more. Jesus did not feel like he needed to be in control of the situation. It's messy. Have you guys begun to notice when things that you're trying to do are starting to get out of control, or like you're having a conversation with somebody that's starting to teeter and it's like, something's happening here. We're going somewhere. Jesus was not afraid of that moment. He wasn't afraid to get dirty. The messy ones were the ones who understood him the best. They were the ones to whom Jesus made the most sense. They were the ones that flocked to him. They were the ones who sought him out. The God of all things is not supposed to wash feet. That's our mindset. But this radical demonstration of love requires us to make peace with that, with our should. We have to make peace with that. And we have to be as ready to get messy as Jesus was, right? He's also doing something very focused. Jesus is notoriously interruptible. It's really interesting. He's interruptible, but he never ever loses focus. It's like pretty fascinating to me. He never gets shaken. He never shifts his mark away from love and grace and the leading of the Father, right? He's just focused. He's willing to be sidetracked 1,000,000 times. And there's plenty of stories, the famous one in Luke where he's on his way to heal somebody, and on the way he gets interrupted by someone else who needs healing, and someone else who needs healing, and then a boy who needs healing, and then he's late. He's late to the person he actually was on his way to heal. She died. And he's like, well, that's not really a problem. Right? She's fine. And he's okay. He's okay to be interrupted. He's okay to be distracted. He was distracted, but he always comes back to center. And genuinely, the more I study Jesus and the more I live my life, that's the thing about him I admire the most. I don't know how he did that. He was not easily distracted. He was interruptible, but he was not easily distracted. Peter, he's ever the tryhard. He's one of the most interesting people. He resists Jesus' initial offer here, right? He's like, hey, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus very, I think, kindly, but also freely rebukes him immediately. He's like, okay, then you can't be part of what we're doing. And it's like, oh crap, okay. Because he knows what they're there for. You're here to be ministered to by me. Jesus sets the stage for that. He's like, I need you to get over it. Okay? His message to Peter is, you have to receive this as I'm going to give it to you. Right? Nothing less. I'm the one who's giving the gift. I get to determine what it looks like. Right? So Peter relents. But then he actually goes even harder in the opposite direction, right? Like the pendulum swing, like, I'm not going to be part of this. And then he's like, okay. If this is what we're doing, I relent. But then also, you should wash my head and my hands. So he immediately turns it into like this weird, like religious, legalistic thing. Immediately. It's like his instinct. He's like, okay, well, I know you washed all their feet, but you can wash my feet, but you also have to wash all the rest of me too. Because I want the most blessing. I want the most experience. I want the most whatever. Like, I want to be the special one, Jesus. As anyone else, when you've been in a room, just like, I just want to be so special. Please look at me. Somebody. That's why I have a microphone. So he relents. Okay, then wash my hand and my hands. He wants to turn it into a winning and losing experience. He wants more attention, more holiness, more of something that he feels like he's lacking. He's the last one in line. Peter's the only one who complains, and then he asks for more. And the other disciples, I can only imagine, are just like, what the heck, man? Like, we only got the feet. Is that something we were supposed to do? Were we supposed to ask for more? As an aside, by the way, I was thinking about this as I was praying about it. Jesus says, hey, there's somebody in our midst who's going to betray us. I know we all know it was Judas, so it's no fun. It's not like a murder mystery. But who was the one who always argued with Jesus? What? Peter. Who is the one who always asked for more? Who was the one who was the closest to Jesus? Who was the one that in Matthew, Jesus literally calls Satan? Everybody in the room's like, it's Peter for sure. Like, this is not a hard thing. Judas is like in the corner like, sick. I'm going to get away with it. Right? Like, it's so obvious that it's Peter, and it's one of my favorite things in the whole world, because I think if I had been in the room, it probably would have been, that would have been me. It's just funny. But Jesus is clear to Peter in this moment. His offer of listen to this, guys. His offer of washing just their feet was enough. It was enough. That's all they needed. It was enough. And enough is a hard word in our culture. It's so hard. Be honest. Have we been taught in our lives what is actually enough? Like how much we actually need that is enough? Enough food, enough money, enough significance, enough acceptance, enough platform, enough people, enough impact, enough love, right? What would Jesus say to that? What is enough? Right? Peter wanted to make this more than it was, and it was not okay. He wanted to he wanted to steal more from Jesus than Jesus was offering him. Right? And we do this all the time. But Jesus is clear to him. Hey, you're already clean. Like, you're good, man. I'm just doing this as an act of love. I don't need to do all this other stuff. You're clean. In this moment, cleaning your feet is enough. This is enough love for you right now. Right? This is as much as you can receive and understand. Because you're not going to get this now. You're going to get it later. Defining what is enough is maybe, in our culture, one of the hardest, and it might be the primary task of discipleship in this day and age. Because we are never done wanting more, I'm going to say in America, because that's what I know, but in our Western culture, enough is not a good word. There's even a culture of like, I am enough, but you don't believe it, right? That's why you fight so hard for all this stuff. That's why identity in Christ matters so much, because he's the one who defines that you're enough. You can't just say it and make it true. It's not like a magic spell. Jesus knows these things for each and every one of us who call him Lord as disciples. He knows what is enough for us and where we are in our walk and what we need. He knows that. And he wants to meet us where we believe we lack, but we don't. We don't lack there. We just think we do. He knows this. And knowing that he is committed to this, to you having enough, is what helps us focus on those around us instead of on ourselves and gaining more and getting more and getting more and getting more, right? Because when it's all about you, it's really hard to focus on other people. So I'll give you an insight into my own life. I know this is true about me. It's becoming less true. But just because of my own wounding, I really value competency. It was just the way that love was displayed to me. When I did a good job, or when I did a good thing, or when I was good at something, I got a lot of high fives, a lot of cheers, a lot of good job. You know what I never really got? Never. You know what I did not seem to get enough of in my life was just enough praise for being alive. Like just being me. And so my preference is always to display competency and then hide the actual like who I am. And like, I'll show you this for sure. Like, I'll tell you all day about how smart I am and how many degrees I have and like all these certificates and blah, 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 blah. But if you want to know about me, that's going to be a different conversation because I don't really want to talk about that. I believe that that part of me is innately unlovable, right? I feel like I lack there. And so it's just easier to create a mask that does those things instead, right? And that's where I feel like I lack. The truth is I don't. Foundationally, I am enough accepted and significant and secure in Christ that I need to be. And then all that competency stuff, that's great. That's nice. It's a good thing. And it lets me leverage that for the sake of others. But until I can get to that point, or until I've gotten more and more to that point, even the stuff that I do for other people is self-centered and selfish. Doesn't mean I don't do it. It doesn't mean that I don't love people. It just means that my goal in showing you competency is not for your good, it's for my good. It's what I want. I'm trying to get significance from you, right? It's just hard. It's a hard thing. All of us have battles like that. It's normal. But you do have to go through the battle because it's hard. It's a hard thing. And so Jesus here telling the disciples, like, you don't lack anything. I am just doing this out of love for you, this one act, nothing more, nothing less. This is enough. It's hard, especially when you think about all the things that Jesus could have done but didn't do. Like if you were going to prep your disciples for the rest of their lives without you, I would have chosen a totally different train of thought and track. I would have gone a totally different direction. Like, let's get you prayed up. Let's do a couple of different seminars. I'm going to give you like 20 prophetic words about the future so you could be ready for all of this stuff, right? Like that's the stuff we would want to do. Jesus washes their feet. That's what he chose to do. And that's hard. That's a hard thing to wrestle with. So we have to figure out what is enough. And that helps us to focus, who can I help? How can I encourage them? How can I keep my eye on the ball for those who don't have enough and who don't have what I have an abundance of, right? It brings us to the same place that Jesus was in when he ministered to people. Present, focused, alert. That's what we want. Last but not least, Jesus is doing something vulnerable. I actually looked for a lot of alternative words because of just how much of a buzzword vulnerable is. I didn't want it to be misconstrued. There are a lot of ways to lead a moment like this. Like if you're a leader and you're looking at this moment, you're like, this is interesting that he does this. But Jesus, in his wisdom, chose in this moment to make himself primarily vulnerable. And it just makes sense to describe this moment, because to be vulnerable means to leave yourself open to attack, to leave yourself open to misunderstanding, to leave yourself open to you presenting something to somebody and them like stepping all over it, or making fun of it, or bashing it, or not honoring it the way that you would like them to, right? That's what it means to be vulnerable in this moment. They might even scorn it or make fun of it or abuse it. He is demonstrating the position that we put ourselves in when we really do something beautiful out of love for a person. It's a vulnerable thing. It's intense. It's also very courageous, right? It's a good thing that he has done. Here's two things that I would say about his vulnerability that are helpful for us as we also serve people in a similar kind of way. Jesus' vulnerability here does not preclude, it does not mean that he was not honest. He was very honest, actually. Like maybe you might even be like a little too honest, right? He called this moment for what it was. We are here to celebrate Passover together, as we have many times. I'm going to cultivate this intimate moment of service and teaching, but I will be honest. There is somebody here who is going to turn this around and turn me over to the authorities. This just is what it is, right? And then then he's like, and I let them be here. I let them in, right? It's just so weird. I accept the consequences of my actions, says Jesus, by letting them be in the room. He did not try to shield his friends from the harsh realities of those same consequences, of the kind of life that he lived and he called them to live. Some of us would not lead that way. We'd be like, I'm going to do all this stuff, and then I've got my follower. I'm going to shield them from all of the things, right? I'm not going to let them in on like the harsh realities of this thing. He does not do that. He's like, nope, stuff's about to get real. But here's how we're going to prep for it. He was very honest. It also does not mean that he was not generous in his vulnerability. Just super interesting. For many of us, being vulnerable is, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, it is often still a pretty selfish thing, right? That's okay. But it is for your sake that you are vulnerable. In this moment of Jesus' vulnerability, he does it also as an act of generosity to them. Despite all he knew, as verse 2 says, that he had loved his disciples during his ministry on earth, and now he's going to love them right through to the end, to the field goal. It's almost a cliche now to say, but the truth remains that Jesus washed Judas's feet as well. Right? Knowing the whole thing from beginning to end. He knew exactly how this was going to go down. He still washed his feet. The offering stood for Judas until the very last moment to say yes to what he was trying to do. In a very literal way, Jesus is demonstrating a love for someone who considers you their enemy by washing feet. Someone who is scheming and they are plotting against you. And it's that same spirit that would let him look on those who would crucify him and say to his own Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Right? That's the spirit. And so no, his vulnerability is courageous, and it's based on a knowledge of his own identity that's very firmly set in him as teacher Master, Lord, beloved Son. He can be hurt, and he's about to be very hurt. That's what he knows. He is ultimately, though, safe in the hands of the Father. Even in pain, he is safe. And he is, at least at this moment, willing to put everything on the line because of that relationship that he has. And it's wild. I just encourage you, it would be a crime to miss the opportunity to experience this moment with Jesus and learn what he has for us by overanalyzing it or intellectualizing it, by just like doing all the things. That's why I wanted Maddie to help us experience it as much as we could. This moment is filled with the kind of awe that only comes when someone is overwhelmingly generous and kind to you. Of just like, you are speechless. This is so wild. That's the kind of awe that this moment inspires. And because of that, Jesus' teaching in verses 12 through 20 is actually pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. He says, by calling me Lord, you confess that you are not better than me. Which is pretty nice. It's a good thing. If you don't pray in the morning, you can at least pray, Lord, I know I'm not better than you are. And that'll put you in a pretty good spot. You know you're not better than me. So here, what you just experienced by me washing your feet, do that for one another. Right? Because here is your identity. He says, you are a messenger. And what you just experienced, everything we've done these past couple of years, that is your message. That's what you were being sent to proclaim. It's messy, it's focused, it's vulnerable expressions of love and service and good news. In short, Jesus is saying, if living this way was good enough for me, it really needs to be good enough for you. Honestly, right? Nothing more, nothing less. Today, if you do call Jesus Lord, you might be coming to this text from a couple of different angles in your heart. And I'm aware of this. One, you don't know, or at least you don't believe that you're a messenger. Just let you in on a secret. That's an identity issue. It's okay. You're still loved. But you are, Jesus is saying you are a messenger. Not if you do enough, you're a messenger. You are a messenger. Right? You are messaging to the world. And so I would just encourage you to be aware of that. Maybe it's possible that other people or the world don't know or believe that you're a messenger. That is a discipleship issue, right? If the world's not aware of it, then there might be something up with your relationship with Jesus that would be meaningful for you to lean into. And that's okay. It's not a big deal. Lastly, and I think this is usually the more prevalent one, maybe you think that God doesn't want you to be a messenger. Like, you're saved, you did all the things, you know, it's good, but if in your heart of hearts you really are not confident, like you're on like the C team for God, you know, like JV or maybe even less than, I don't know what's less than JV, freshman. Maybe you're on the freshman practice squad of God's team, right? It's not true. It's really not. That is often an experience issue. There's a reality where you need to experience the love of God in a meaningful and relational way to let you know that you are okay and you are enough. God very much loves you and wants you to be a messenger for Him. And it's good. It's a good thing. So if that feels like that resonates with you, again, I would encourage you to reach out or lean into that. But regardless of where you're at, this kind of love that we're talking about, it's available to you daily, and it is very much enough in quantity and quality to heal and to redeem and to restore. Jesus wants to wash your feet, but you have to be open to it. You have to be okay with it. And you have to make peace with the God of the universe washing your feet. It's a good thing. It really is. At Delco, we don't assume that you just have like this incredible amount of time or intentionality to spend to yourself in quiet or reflection. And so we always have a time of response at the end because we really don't want this moment to get away from us, especially if the Lord's asking you to do something. So we're going to take 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, I'm not sure, and just kind of sit in the midst of this. I've got a prayer prompt for you to maybe ask the Lord, what does it look like for me to be ready to be messy and focused and vulnerable in my life, whatever your context is. That might be something you want to hear from the Lord. I've got a reflection question that might be interesting. What places do I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I'm called to be a messenger? And then what would it look like for me to do that if I believe that were true? So maybe you want to reflect on that in your journal or in your the cards we have. And then something we've been doing since the beginning of the year is we're going to have an opportunity to pray. Caroline and Maddie are going to come up, and I'm going to be up here, and we're just going to be open. If you have any prayer needs today, if you have something that you'd like prayer for, if you have something in your life that's going on, if you have some area that you'd love healing, if you'd love to just confess something, whatever it might be, you stand in a long line of Christians who want to be ministered to by the Spirit of Jesus, and that's a good thing. And so we just think that there's something that can happen when we do that relationally with one another. So we'll be up front. It's not awkward. It's totally normal, which means that it's probably not normal, right, if you have to say it. But we'll be up here, and I would just encourage you at some point, if that speaks to you, to just come up to one of us, and we'll pray with you and just love on you the best we can. Sound good? Let me pray for us, and then we'll jump in. Jesus, you are good to us. You are better to us than we are to ourselves. Jesus, I confess and repent of the many, 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 many moments that I choose not to receive the love that you have for me, that's right in front of me, where I want to just do my thing in my way, with my expression of it. When you ask me to be messy and focused and vulnerable, and I choose not to be, Lord, I just lay that in front of you. You know the specifics. Spirit of God, would you just come and illuminate us? Would you move us? Would you speak to our hearts even now as we ask good questions about what it means to follow you today in light of how you served your disciples? I get a sense that the Lord's been running after folks' hearts for a long time. A couple of people in this room, actually a lot of people in this room. And that he'd just love for you to stop and let him catch up and speak to you. Jesus, just fill us with your love even now as we meditate on your word. In your name, amen. I'll come up and dismiss in a couple of minutes. Feel free to pray and reflect.